Hello, Nancy here. I'd like to share with you a few thoughts about using the TRIAC model when you're teaching students how to write a paragraph. So this is a model that's a part of the IUW system, but how do you know when your students are ready for this? I would recommend that you wait until students are in later middle school years or possibly not even until high school. How do you know when your student's ready? Well, I would say that a student using the TRIAC model, if they're younger than high school, should be familiar with the IUW method and maybe have used it for 3 or 4 years already. You want students who are able to write a good, solid paragraph already before they begin this. So TRIAC stands for topic, restriction, illustration, analysis, and clincher. So it's a way to organize their thoughts. So the topic obviously would be the topic of the paragraph. Restriction means the claim that you're going to make. So for example, if the topic should be that Aeneas needs to continue on from Carthage and go to Italy. One restriction might be Aeneas needs to leave because he's been told to leave by the gods. That would be your restriction or the claim that you're making. Illustration would be the evidence that you're giving. In this case, it would be Mercury comes to Aeneas with a message from the gods that he has to continue on to Italy so that he can found this new home for the Trojan people. And you would use an exact quote. Normally, you would use an exact quote from your source. And it is possible, though, if it's a longer quotation, students could do it as an indirect quote and just give some information. The important thing is that there is some kind of illustration, though. There has to be evidence to support the claim that they're making. The next step would be analysis. That's where the student connects the illustration, the evidence that they gave, to the claim that they made. So in this case, the analysis step might sound something along the lines of clearly Aeneas could not disobey the gods, and so he had to continue on from Carthage even though he knew it would break Dido's heart. Okay. And then at the end of the paragraph, you would have a clincher that would just kind of reference back to the topic that was stated at the beginning of the paragraph. Now, at the high school level, very often students will have a topic, a restriction, an illustration, an analysis, and then a second restriction, illustration, and analysis. So let's say you're doing a topic in history, and you're saying that there were multiple reasons why the United States chose to enter World War II. Okay? So your first restriction might be one of those reasons why. Then you give some evidence to support an analysis. And then the second restriction could be a second reason why the United States entered. Okay? So that's the basics of what the TRIAC model is. So make sure that your students are ready for it. And make sure that they understand the importance of each step. I have found that with students in 8th grade and in 9th grade, it was that analysis step that was particularly difficult for them. I would encourage you to model that step as much as possible. As a class, you could write a sentence or two that show that analysis, write it on the board for them. I personally would allow the students to write that down in their outline or in their rough draft if we were at that point, and they could use it as a part of their paragraph. The students who were ready for this step on their own never wanted to use the one we created as a class. But this really helped those struggling students. And then as they created their final draft, sometimes they tweaked it or altered it. But even if they used it exactly how we had written it on the board, it got into their mind what was needed in the paragraph there. And eventually they could move away from it, from having to use the one we created as a class. But I would not think you could help too much on this. Continue to model it for them. Continue to help them. So eventually they will be able to do it on their own. But in the meantime, it's okay if they need help with that. Again, make sure that they cite any direct quotes or indirect quotes. Let's say you're writing a paragraph for a science class And they are not so much quoting directly from their source, but they're giving statistics or information about something. Make sure they know they still need to cite their source on that, where they got it from. That, of course, means that they're going to have a works cited section included. Once they have those steps down really solidly, you can start working on that clincher sentence, also being a transition into the next topic. That takes a little bit of time for them to develop, and it's not something that I would probably focus on if they were later on in middle school, but I would wait until they're really comfortable making sure they have a good topic, sentence restriction, illustration, and analysis, and at least a basic clincher. Once they're really good at those things, then you can work into writing those more transitional clinchers. So remind them again that the thesis that they have in their introduction, as they're writing these TRIAC paragraphs, they might need to go back and revise that first thesis. Sometimes after they've written their body paragraphs, they realize they took it in a slightly different direction or focused on something a little bit differently, and that's totally fine. Again, make sure they give context to their quotes, and so their reader's not lost as to what they're referencing. And there's a really great example of this. I think on your screen here it says page 86. There's a really good example of how to create literary analysis using the TRIAC model. If you're using this in 8th grade or older, I highly recommend that you use that example with the students and kind of talk them through it. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful, and good luck using the TRIAC model with your students.